first order of business be approving minutes. Can we do that?
Why can't you?
I was listening to you guys talking about minutes. I don't know.
Always possible.
February 11th first. Okay, well, when somebody's ready, we move for the approval of February 11th.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second on approving the minutes for February 11th? Second it. Okay. Any discussion? All of them more time to go through them, or? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from February 11th?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained? All right, so, that.
Secretary, I think you did a good job, I guess.
What did you just? Next one? Oh, shoot. Okay, how about March 21st? March 17th?
March 17th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 17th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained? Two abstentions, Jim Peters and Lynn Mercer. All right, so now we'll hear from Alan Minkiewicz from Colliers, talking about the design development to project closeout schedule update.
Okay, that's the worksheet that we have here and the Gantt chart, the colorful Gantt chart behind it. Design team's been working since our last meeting on design development, pulling that together. And we've had some meetings with town officials as well, just in the last 4 hours, in fact. We had a lengthy session, which was good. Good information came forward. But on the project, the work plan that you see there, the yellow highlight, the next order of business is to get the updated plans to our estimators. We have an estimator and the design team has an estimator. We're sending them the updated design development plans on May 20th. We're scheduled to get the estimates back from those estimators on June 3rd. And we're going to have a reconciliation meeting on June 7th to compare our notes on that and come up with a reconciled estimate for that. And that's all in ahead of having this DD, the design development submission, going to MSBA on June 14th. So that's the next submission date that's going in for their review. A whole lot of paperwork that has to be filled out with that between ourselves and Jones Winsett. We're taking care of. There'll be some things to be signed by the committee as well, but typical to the schematic design paperwork that we sign. With that, though, that we will have to have a vote after that DD package, before that DD package goes in on June 14th. So if you look at the colorful Gantt chart here, up along the top where we show the school building committee meetings, and it says special in yellow, we're looking to have, our next meeting in May is a regular session, the third Thursday of the month on May 19th. But in June, what we'd like to do is have it on the second Thursday of the month, which would be June 9th, so we can get a vote by the committee before we submit on the 14th. So if we could just keep that in mind with everybody and see if that works. And then you can see on that Gantt chart the current status where we are as of today and the progress going forward with the other submissions, the construction documents, both at 60 and 90, and when we're going to start doing contractor pre-qualifications second and third week of August and onward down through construction. Any questions on that?
Alan, the first peachy colored line says 614, but it goes to 714. Does it end at 614 or does it extend to 714?
I think that's a month for MSBA review.
To 714? Okay.
Yeah. It probably should go to 714. The pink color here, in the bar it says we started on March 4th and it's going to, it says 614, but it's actually going to 714 if you look in there. So it's just a typo basically. And then when you look down below, we are overlapping when DD goes in and gets reviewed before we actually start working on 60% CD. So there is overlap within the construction document phases. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that. Catch that.
All right. Now we're from Christian and Helen.
Great. So we just had, for the meetings, so that would bring people, so Mark Darnold, our Berkshire Design Group, our civil engineer, Rachel Loeffler, our landscape architect from Berkshire Design Group, Lawson Wilson from our office, another architect in our office working on the project. We'll be going through both architecture, and the focus for tonight will be on site. The focus for our next meeting, which we're going to ask for a different date if possible, will be a little bit more on the mechanical systems. So that's kind of the architecture updates as well. But tonight is site, and next month will be more on the mechanical systems. So on March 30th and 31st, Lawson and Helen and I had 2 very long days meeting with every teacher almost from West Street and East Meadow. So we got a lot of input. We also had our furniture, fixtures, and equipment consultant there, Amanda from Stephora, and so we're getting input both on the plans and a lot of input in particular on the furniture, which was very helpful. And so tonight we'll go through some of the changes, some of the minor tweaks that have happened on the plan from those meetings. Later on in the process, we'll go through the furniture kind of summary. Right now, we're just getting an idea of furniture, so mostly that our electrical contractors really can start understanding where the furniture is going to go and change their design accordingly. And then much further down the road, we'll go into the specifics on the furniture. On April 6th, we met with the design issues subcommittee that we appointed at the last meeting. That was very helpful. And then just earlier today, we met with town department heads. So the overall plan, which you have colored copies in front of you, the overall square footage has not changed. The major thing that's changed is that the special education spaces, we went through those with the district and we really started assigning people to each of those spaces. Before we had just kind of a general idea of, let's have a certain number of small rooms, a certain number of medium-sized rooms, and a certain number of larger rooms for the special education side of the curriculum. And now once we've really figured out, well, this is going to be a speech room, this is going to be a math Title I, this is going to be a reading Title I, we were able to kind of change some of those layouts a little bit. The gym changed quite a bit. We are sizing it better for a middle school size court, taking advantage of the sides of the gym for bleacher seating, both for smaller bleacher seating for when it's used as a gym, and then much larger bleacher seating when it's used as a performance space. We've got ramp access from the gymnasium to the stage, so we have handicap access between those 2 spaces now, which is critical. We've also got a way to seal off the stage the best that we can, so it can be used as an instrumental performance classroom. So there's a door between the gymnasium and the ramp, and there's a folding door that will happen at the front of that stage. We also got the ramp between the cafeteria and the platform and that space figured out a little better. And we're still juggling kind of server room and emergency electrical rooms and those kind of things that our consultants need to place. We had the server room up here in the renovation. Turns out in terms of phasing, it would be much better if that was in the new addition. So we're still playing with some of those spaces. The shared spaces, so we're looking at the kindergarten pre-K classrooms. And that was kind of one of the bigger changes that happened during those teacher meetings. We came with 4 or 5 different options of kind of a shared room up on the hallway, a shared room down where it had access to windows, not having a shared room at all and giving more space to the classroom itself. And once the teachers really started thinking about using that space and having paraprofessionals that are floating throughout the school, coming in and pulling kids out into a small group lesson, it made a lot of sense to put that shared space up near the hallway so that it can really kind of be used as a flexible space for the entire school to use, with some preference for those classrooms. So we would put glass in the door and probably some glass along that wall so that you can see into that space, storage incorporated into it. And so we've been able to incorporate 2 of those in the new addition, which turned out to be really critical once we started figuring out all the rest of the special education spaces, because these kind of became some of our only kind of floating open spaces that anybody could use as a small group room. So that turned into a pretty nice, it worked out well in that new addition space.
So those 2 rooms are going to be used by other grades besides kindergarten and pre-K?
Yeah, I would say probably the majority of the time they will be used by the kindergarten or pre-K, but that there is that flexibility that they can be used by the 1st or 2nd grade classrooms that are in that same wing. And potentially they could open both doors and both classrooms could kind of start sharing some resources between them as well. So it provides that kind of flexibility. We talked a lot about storage with the teachers, so you'll see we have kind of some of these larger, tall wardrobe cabinets. We have more of those than we did before. Storage for larger materials, especially at the pre-K and kindergarten levels. We talked a lot about the cubby area and how that's arranged and how it divides the classroom, whether it should be on this wall or this wall, and just kind of the storage of the classroom in general. Right now, the general idea is that this is the main teaching wall, so that there'll be an interactive projector, and that then we have some other spaces where you can have smaller breakout groups, moon-shaped tables as opposed to kidney bean-shaped tables.
Can you go back to that a minute?
Of course.
This lavatory you got down there, you have a door coming in from each classroom. You don't think that's a problem with privacy and use and function with little kids and
Thank you.
opening the door with the wrong kid in the wrong spot?
Right. So we have 2 different approaches, and that came directly from the teachers. So before we had each classroom getting its own individual bathroom, and so between the 2 kindergartens, that's what we're still showing, is that it's just an individual handicapped accessible toilet for that individual classroom. At the pre-K level, they really wanted the flexibility of having more toilets and just 1 sink, and that they could have a little bit, they weren't worried about a student going in there and monopolizing that bathroom space by closing the door and that being it. That by having 2 toilets in the room and 1 shared sink, that would be easier to kind of cycle the kids through and to monitor them. So the thought was that because this whole school is we're trying to design it to be as flexible as possible. So right now this year, correct me if I'm wrong, there's only 2 kindergarten classes. So given this floor plan, right now, if we only had 2 kindergarten classes, they would take the 2 larger rooms towards the east end of that addition. And the 2 pre-K classrooms would take the 2 rooms on the west end. So they would actually share this bathroom. This would be pre-K, and this would be pre-K. And then that room that's across the hall, that's a sped classroom, could be used as special education, or we have some more flexibility there. If we have 3 kindergarten classrooms, then we're showing it more as we have it on the plans with kindergarten, pre-K here, and then maybe pre-K, another pre-K goes up in that sped classroom that's north of the hall. So we have to think about, that these are kind of generic names, but that it was felt that having those 2 bathrooms and having the amount of supervision that happens at the pre-K level with the number of paras that are in the room, that kind of flexible arrangement worked better for them.
You haven't convinced me, but I'm not a teacher, but you have not convinced me.
Yeah.
I've had experience with that being very poor.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, we've done both, and I don't know.
Okay.
Any other questions on the pre-K kindergarten?
Actually, I have other questions, but you want us to wait until you're done?
No, that's fine.
Thanks.
Anytime.
One is a question that was, that I received from some folks related to the stage.
Yes.
Is there space in the back for the actors or other folks, stage folks, to walk back and forth to each side of the stage?
Right. So here's the new updated gymnasium and stage. So the 2 things that the school district requested were, well, code-wise, we need an accessible means from the gym to the stage, which we did not have before. So we've changed that by adding this ramp over here. Before we had the ramp coming across here, and this was much larger. But the school also wanted to still have that back of stage access. So we do have, true back of stage access from the exterior in terms of bringing in large sets or materials. But that this stairwell can also be used as back of stage, and then behind these curtains, there is access behind the stage, the performance part of the stage.
That will not interfere with any performance as it happens?
Right.
Because this is primarily asked because in most performances, somebody exits this way and then they have to come back the other way.
Right.
Currently, for instance, if they do it at East Meadow, they go out and then they just take another door to come in. And it happened that the last time they were doing it, it was snowing out there. So, we don't want to have a brand new school and having them to go
have to go outside.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, we haven't infringed that with the walls, but with the curtain arrangement, that flexibility would certainly be possible.
The other question that I have is related to the music space,
Yes.
which is the old library.
Yep.
It is now down to, I can't read well, but it's $295, $395, $795.
Yes.
Now, how does that compare to the available music space right now in total
Right.
for elementary schools?
Well, East Meadow, this classroom is music, or this one?
Yep.
One of those two down there, so it's about 850. So it is about,
What is it?
850
Okay.
in that ballpark. So it's about 50 to 60 square feet smaller than it is
Okay.
now.
That's the East Meadow. How about West Street?
I don't know off the top of my
Because we had a large room, we have a large room. in
West Street rooms will be smaller than East Meadows.
But they still, they had their own room. What I'm trying to understand is whether or not this space is adequate for West Street plus East Meadow. Separately, it doesn't make that much difference if we compare those to a single
Have
room.
you talked to you've talked to the music staff, right?
We have,
Okay.
and they were worried about the room being smaller. In terms of programming it, he was worried about the room being smaller, but then once we started putting in storage and furniture, it seems like it will work quite well. He's got a wall of storage on this side, and he's got the teaching wall on that side. It's got taller ceilings than he has now, which is great. Certainly, I don't think for music it needs to be a combination of the size of East Meadow and West Street.
It doesn't have to be.
Because it's still that same, it's just that he's going to be in that one classroom all day instead of moving between the two schools. So the class sizes will remain the same. It'll be more utilized throughout the day, but he'll just own that one room instead of owning two rooms at two separate schools. So I think it was a concern, but that it was not.
And you spoke with both
We did, and we spoke with the instrumental music teacher, and he's concerned about this space as well in terms of noise between the gymnasium and the stage. But right now he doesn't have any room, and it's unfortunately a room that's not included in the MSBA space summary. Like the MSBA doesn't pay for an instrumental music room at the elementary school level. So we're doing the best we can by making a stage also the instrumental music room. What we're really trying to do is preserve some kind of storage off of that stage that he can use. And then of course there'll be storage on the stage as well. We talked about some of that with our furniture consultant, some of those Wanger, pull open, large instrumental storage cabinets. It's not ideal, I will be honest. But I think that it satisfies that program the best that we can, while also keeping it within the square footage that we're allotted and trying to make it used as a performance space that can be used for the whole school.
I mean, it's a little concerning to hear that it's not ideal and we're trying to squeeze things in there when we're trying to spend millions of dollars and build a brand new school. And I'm not saying this knowing anything about the future of the program or how many students we're going to have in the future. But since this thing is based on some forecasts that we have, I hope it will be adequate for a long time. And it's not really too tight.
Right.
And it looks like the art space is pretty similar to what we have today.
Yes,
Present room.
it's this present room, and we're going to lay it out quite differently. She kind of has a peninsula right now that comes out and breaks the room in half that she'd like to get rid of. There's a toilet in one of her storage closets that we would get rid of. So I think it'll be a much more flexible and usable space, but she seemed pretty happy with with her square footage and size of that
The
room.
kiln is staying in there?
Kiln is staying in, which is great that it's working well. It's in a room that's already built for it, which is fantastic.
And what we call commons here, what is that? It's just,
So that's breakout space. We're trying to preserve little common areas where we can up in the 4th through 6th grade, 3rd through 6th grade. We really felt that, so we have an IT storage room off of that. We still have yet to get into our technology budget, but we heard from a lot of the teachers that if they can get some iPad or laptop carts, that they really see that is kind of the wave of the future and provide some flexibility so they can see students going out into that common area, using those laptop carts, and having just a separate space that they can go in from their classroom. We weren't sure, we weren't pushing this idea very hard, but the teachers, especially at I would say the 5th and 6th grade levels, really thought that was a feature that would be well used. That was what was missing in the classroom now, is that right now they have small groups go out of the classrooms, but they just sit in the hall, on the floor, in the middle of the hall. And so having this kind of space that was set up for that, they thought that was
Is there a way out of the music room into that common area?
Right now there's not. In fact, we're
You have to have another way out of that room, right?
out of the music room.
You can't have just one exit.
It's not big enough. It goes back to the not big enough.
Right.
It's not of high enough square footage that requires that second means of egress from the space. Yeah.
Because what if there was something in the hallway there? Where would they? Don't they have to have another way out of that room? If there's an issue in the hallway, how would they? There's no other way to get out of that room.
Not if there's left under that square footage.
Same way in some of these classrooms over here too.
Well, they can exit into the other classrooms then.
Yeah, but there's a way through the classroom to other
That's
classrooms.
true.
No, some of them are.
so as an idea, I actually like, especially based on the feedback that you seem to have received, two things. I'm wondering, and just wondering about the size, whether it's, it's the size that is needed for that purpose. The other one is, and you mentioned it, the way it opens, and there's no other way to get there. It seems to serve only primarily those classes on that side. What if somebody else wants to use it for that? They're going to walk all the way around and get to that commons.
Right. Yes, they don't have to do that. I mean, it's again, we're dealing within the existing footprint. I mean, part of the reason why we had to put the wall here between music and commons, maybe we would have shifted it 4 feet that way, but that lines up exactly with the structural beam that's on top. And there's clear story windows to each side. So each room will have nice daylighting from those high clear story windows that are in the library now. But that wall kind of has to go exactly where it is. And these structural walls are staying where they are now, and we're cutting in some doorways along that structural wall, but that's about as much of cutting that we can do to the existing structural wall without making our structural engineer jump through a lot of different hoops for this existing structure.
And it's probably the same size as the music room, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So stage we talked about, we're again trying to preserve this music storage, but this whole mechanical server room is still definitely a work in progress.
Just a quick note, and this is a thought. We are thinking about that stage in terms of what we have today and in terms of the elementary school that we're building. But also remembering that this will be used for other purposes, for larger purposes that may, involve larger instruments in that. Do you think that music storage is still, or did you get any feedback that music storage is still adequate for that purpose?
He wanted as much storage as he could get, which is what most of the teachers wanted.
The plan we showed him didn't even have this. I think if Greg saw it, he'd be pretty happy. His issue has always been being able to secure the instruments when other things are going on in his shared space.
Right.
So I think he would be pleased to see a secured, pretty sizable storage room.
Right. I think it'd be a combination between a storage room that we can fit and then whatever storage built in we can have along that wall for instrument storage.
Speaking of storage,
storage become an issue?
It's
There's some, you
it's
have
always an
storage
issue.
closets there that you're taking away. There were closets off the hallway.
Up in here, up in this area.
Yeah, the whole area.
Yeah. And
Some
I
of those
think
you're taking away, right?
we're eliminating, we've been telling the teachers about 50% of them. It's probably pretty close to that. And so we've been talking about that with Jen in particular because she's familiar with those, how they're used today. Honestly, she felt that probably about 50% of the stuff that's in there could be thrown away without anybody noticing. So I think that's one step.
So like for shipping, receiving, is that like where is that where copy paper would be stored and all the other kind of things that's what the plan is?
Right. Some of that would be distributed to where the copiers are. So we're going to have a copier in each of the teacher planning rooms,
Yeah.
and a copier down here in the administration wing, and a copier in the library. So some of that could be distributed to those areas, but certainly right now they don't have a shipping receiving room. So by having that large 800 square foot shipping receiving room, that should help with some of those items. Going to the cafeteria.
Christian, do you mind if I ask one more question?
Not at all.
The computer classroom, is it comparable to what we have today? The size?
Much smaller.
No. And it will be part of the library, so it's not going to be a divided space. It's kind of glass walls to 10 feet high, so it's somewhat divided from the rest of the library, but definitely a part of that room. And we've talked to teachers about that. Some, I would say the majority felt that it was no problem. A few felt that that was a very big problem. But once we kind of went through with the principals in particular and talked about the use of iPad or laptop carts, we are going to try and have some dedicated space in each classroom for either 2 desktops or 2 laptops, so they can be there, so that that they can still use those. That it was felt that this arrangement would work and speaks better to where the school district wants to go in terms of more portable laptops and less desktop computer rooms.
But I think there's a slight challenge in that thinking that we're only thinking based on what we know today, and we're thinking of desktops and laptops. If there's something else like a smart board or something else that will be added, that room may not be large enough. And just jump in any time. We were having the same conversation about technology last night. It's actually one of the key elements of the strategic plan right now, and I'm wondering whether or not a small classroom like that will be consistent with what we're trying to do and where we're trying to get as far as technology and teaching the kids technology and all that.
You want to distribute technology, you do not want to contain it.
But it's the classroom. Distributing is in terms of using. This is a classroom in terms of teaching.
Right.
So if we need instructions related to classrooms, I mean, think of a workplace. We all have our laptops on our desks, but if I'm going to go get trained on something, I go into space. That's how I'm thinking about this. Do you think that it's...
I think it's big enough. I think what currently happens in the library at East Meadow is the computers are distributed throughout the room. So they're sprinkled about in all different places. They're not congregated in a single area. By putting up a glass wall classroom, it also allows teachers to go in and use that space while the library media specialist is out in the main part of the facility doing something else. So it gives more flexibility than now, which is if the library media specialist is in the space, nobody has access to it. And it works now because you're in 2 buildings. When she's there all the time, that's not going to work. So this gives that flexibility.
The cafeteria. Right now, this room is a storage room off of the gym. To here. And this is your access to the platform here. So we're cutting into that room to make room for a ramp. We tried to push it off of the platform as much as possible because our ramp was taking up a great portion of our platform. So we tried to push it into that room with minimal demolition as possible to structural walls. So we have a handicap access between the cafeteria and the platform. Right now, this is the instrumental music teacher space, which is divided from the cafeteria by a curtain, and also used, for whatever performances they have. So I think this becomes a flexible space that anybody in the school can use. I think one of the benefits is that hopefully that the stage, if there's a small presentation or even a small performance, that can happen here, and that stage can remain the instrumental music room, except for when we're doing really large productions. So there is some flexibility with that. We also looked at expanding the cafeteria somewhat. So because both schools are coming to this one location, the cafeteria just barely fit the number of tables that we needed to seat all the students. Or not all the students, but we had 3 seatings a day, so a third of the student population. So these are all not structural walls, and this chair storage space isn't very well utilized right now. So we were thinking about expanding the cafeteria out to this edge, and actually making the cafeteria feel a little bit more part of that hallway. So kind of open to the school, but did want to add doors so that we could isolate the cafeteria for noise as we wanted, and we talked about maybe furring out this wall and increasing the sound transmission coefficient of that wall to kind of protect that classroom from that noise. But it gives a more flexibility to the cafeteria and provides just a little bit more space in that area. The other thing that it does, as I'll get back to here, is that we talked a little bit about community use after hours. So our current plan is that we can close these doors here, lock them down, and we can lock down the existing doors here and use the gymnasium and the lobby as a community space after hours. People can still egress through the gymnasium or through the front or through that secondary entrance. And if they wanted to, you could then open up the gymnasium and the lobby and the cafeteria and shut these double doors up here. And so that way you could egress through the cafeteria, through the secondary, through the primary, and then you just get some more spaces. So if you had a larger function where you wanted to use both the gym and the cafeteria, you could do that after hours pretty easily.
I don't understand though how the cafeteria would be used during the school day if, I see how you added that extra space that was a walkway or a hallway.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to benefit you though if you shut the doors? You're not going to put tables there because you have to keep the space open for walking. So
Right.
what's the benefit?
The benefit is just from here to there.
The
Oh,
closet.
oh.
The closet.
So it's just giving you another 5 feet,
I see.
but for the whole width of that room, that turns into some pretty significant square footage. It gives you a little more flexibility around here. So yeah, certainly you wouldn't put tables in there, but it does give you a little more flexibility that way. And I think it would also just feel a lot more open without having those double doors kind of closing down that wall. That if you had that open to the hallway, it might help the feel of that space in general. Student storage. So that's kind of focused on the floor plan, and then we did dive into some details on student storage. I think we had the cubbies pretty well figured out for the pre-K through 2nd grade. The only change on that was that we had 2 students sharing one wider cubby, and because of lice concerns and other issues, we want that central divider. So now each student has their own space. Similarly, right now at the upper grades, everyone shares a bunch of hooks in a closet. And from what I understand, that just kind of becomes a place where you throw your backpack and throw your jacket and throw your boots and hope that you go home with the same boots that you came in with. So the teachers did want individual space for the students, if at all possible, at those upper grade levels. It becomes difficult because those classrooms are a little bit smaller, and if we extend the student storage into the classroom, much like we do here at the pre-K level with these kind of peninsulas, we really start cutting out some of that square footage of the classroom. So we devised a way to divide the space vertically in 3 different kind of cubbies, so that you have space for a backpack and boots, and then you still have a small space left over for mailboxes up at the top. We've since heard from Jen that maybe we don't need boot storage for the older grades, but it still seems worthwhile to have kind of a smaller storage area, whether that's for a lunchbox or anything, books, binders, etc. And so this way, right now, student storage takes from here to here, and then the teacher has this little tall wardrobe closet there. So by giving each student their own space, we wrap the corner and come across another 4 feet into the classroom, but we don't have any peninsulas jutting out into the room. We're still able to furnish it pretty flexibly, and it does give each student their own individual spot, so hopefully we'll kind of contain all of those things a little bit better than the current arrangement. So we're still getting some feedback from Jen on that in terms of the depth of them. She recommended maybe 14 inches deep instead of 12. And so we're playing with some of those items, but this is the direction we're headed for the storage for the upper grades. Questions on that? Student storage ends up being a very big factor. That's it for architecture. I'm going to pass it over to site.
So we just wanted to take a moment to update you where we are and where we left off and where we're headed. I'll be talking about playgrounds, parking, and the courtyard design, and then Mark is going to take us through the well and permitting and all that. So this is the site plan.
I was just betting it. This is like
This is the site plan where we last left off. We have parent, teacher, we have drop off in this area, bus parking in between the two schools, a shared parking area for junior, senior high, and East Middle School. We had 2 separate play areas, pre-K through 2nd and 3rd through 6th. And after the last round of value engineering, we were directed to cut a lot of the play equipment and think about long-term fundraising and what can go in now. So that's where we left off. So thinking about that a little bit more, first of all, we want to be 100% accessible for everyone. And if we can't be that, then we want to be 90% accessible. So as we're thinking about any changes, what we had in SD was 100% accessible, and what we are working towards will keep that priority. So as of the value engineering budget, we have 460 students for grades pre-K through 6. And of that, our budget was able to purchase us 2 slides. In that budget, we could reuse 1 swing set, and we could afford to buy additional swing sets, and that was it. We did have play surfacing in that budget, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then the rest of it, for 3 through 6, we were recycling the earth, so to speak, the earth that was excavated from the foundations of the building construction, and using that on site to create terrain and provide structures for slides and swings to sit on. So saving money, using your money well. So we went back, and again, this is something that will be evaluated holistically as we go through this process, as we save money in other areas, and we work together to prioritize different parts of the design. This number can change, but this is our starting point for going forward. So in that value engineering budget, we had a budget of $213,000, and that includes the play surfacing and the $37,000 for the play equipment. So this number, we're working from assumption this is our starting point for going forward. And looking at it, the ADA surfacing, the wood mulch surfacing, is pretty expensive. So if we have a strategy where we can reduce that square footage, then suddenly we can buy more play equipment on site. So looking back at the 3rd through 6th, we were able to retain a lot of our previous strategy that you saw before. We have a landform that is 6 feet higher than grade here, but the paths to it are fully accessible, so we're less than 5% slope. So anyone in a wheelchair can go up to the top of the overlook and look around. They can access the slide. We're able to purchase now a climbing net. We're able to purchase now a wood deck area for gathering or telling stories or narrating or whatever the kids want to do. Then for the pre-K through 2nd grade, where we left off, this was just left as play surfacing, like a placeholder for whenever more play equipment could be fundraised. Well, looking back at reassignment of the numbers, by reducing the play surfacing, we can now take terrain and create a sculptural landform that then carves out different types of play activities. So in the center of this play area, again, we have an accessible path that goes up to 3 feet here to access the top of the slide. And then we have another landform that encloses a lawn area with stepping stones and sand, a sandbox basically. And we have a gravel area here that's enclosed with landform again. And the whole circulation is laid out so that kids can run circuits. If they have trikes, they can go up and down and around. And so this now becomes a maze, a running path, a loop. It can keep going. And then we also have enough to purchase more swings on site.
Go back to the third to sixth grade for a second. Who determines, or did you determine, and I just missed it because I missed a meeting, what equipment you buy? Like, why did you say a climbing net?
Okay. We can talk about what equipment teachers want. We can definitely go through that again. What we started with, what we had when the budget was cut, we looked at, we have 37,000. A set of swings is 10,000. An ADA side is 17,000 or 15,000 depending on your age group. And so those were we picked those because that's the way we could extend the money the most for those age groups. Looking at play activities for this age group, this is an age group where they're very active, they're social, they're developing advanced motor skills, and so having something on playground that's challenging for them is something that is often recommended. Whether it's a climbing net structure or if it's something else that the teachers would feel would be an equal activity.
I have no idea. I was just wondering if that's what you see most of when you're designing these, or if someone requested it from our school system.
It was a suggestion for a more advanced motor skill activity. We could swap it out with something else if somebody had a strong preference either way.
Judy and Cheryl and anyone else from the district, this is the first time they're seeing the new plan. So this hasn't really been vetted yet. You're all seeing it at once.
Okay. And this can all change based upon feedback we get. Yes. What's different about this plan from a traditional play system is that with a traditional play system, you will invest in a play structure that has ramps up and connecting pathways that are above the ground, trying to get people up to the height of the slide or the structure or the climbing structure. And what this is providing is that we're doing that with earth. So the earth is providing access up, the change in elevation, and then we're hanging different structures off of that. Okay. So are there any other questions about the play equipment or strategy? Okay. So just want to bring you up to date with the parking strategy that we have on site. So on site today, we have 248 spaces that are shared between the junior senior high school and the East Meadow School. And our working assumption up until this point has been we're adding East Meadow to the East Meadow population to the school system, so we need to expand. West Street. Sorry, that's okay. West Street School. I went to. That was my elementary. We're adding that student population here, so we're under the assumption that we need to increase the parking spaces by the number of parking spaces that are at West Street. So that would bring us up roughly to 360 spaces on site. And this is something that we're going to want to revisit with you guys again as we go forward in the process, because there are a number of different factors that are pushing the numbers down or up based upon the criteria.
So one criteria is that we looked at the Department of Transportation's recommendations for parking spaces based upon the student population. And the 360 is a little bit higher, so that's something that we may want to reevaluate. According to those recommendations, this is a surplus of parking. LEED 4.0, which is going to be part of a larger discussion and should be looked at with all the credits so we understand what we're turning down and accepting. Their requirements for parking they turned it up a notch. What they require is their base minimum to get a credit. So they require taking the Department of Transportation numbers and then reducing them by a percentage. So that number could go down even more if we wanted that credit. We could also choose to not go back to that credit. Part of that credit also, this is a new thing, is that it requires one of three things. It requires alternative fueling station with alternative fuels, a charging station, electric charging station, or a bus fleet that is completely green, and they have certain emissions requirements for that. So those are some of the factors that may affect these counts, but also from the town standpoint and from a planning board standpoint and from you guys' use after hours standpoint, this number is something that we'll need directions from you guys on. Do you have any more thoughts on?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
You're showing this parking lot, the one that says 168, it's probably 20, 25 feet from the edge of the school up there, something like that. We need that parking lot the day school opens. You're going to start construction in June or September of 17, and we're going to be using that back building in September there to put students in. We need to have that parking lot built and ready to be occupied when students come in. And how are we going to get there?
We had a very helpful conversation before this meeting with the department heads, and we were talking about exactly that, how we're going to phase in bus access and parking. So in phase one, this where my hand is where the construction set down area will be. This will be fenced off. This will be the construction part of the site. We had talked about looking at possibly connecting to Maximilian Drive or bringing buses through the site and exiting on Maximilian, and then having the existing parking lot for parent-teacher areas. But that's something that we're going to have to work out more to make sure that it works at all phases of construction.
This is a personal opinion, but if you're doing it in the first phase, we don't want the second coat put on it, have the contractor drive around with their trucks on it all day.
Oh yeah.
I'm still very concerned how you're going to do this when you're only 25 feet from the building, and we've got to get every one of these students in and out of that building every day.
Well, some of this site work, Jim, is scheduled to happen during the summer.
So it's got to happen from the day school starts, and when school opens, you'll have the parking lot 168 or some semblance of that ready for us to use.
When the school opens to both student populations in the fall of
Just the population
2018.
from the back. They got to park somewhere if you're taking the whole front. And you're taking part of the high school, so we got to park somewhere.
Right.
Put it in your thinking cap.
Right. I think we'll come back with the phasing plan after we've revised that. I think that'll
Something that
help.
keeps me awake at night.
Okay.
Okay.
Rachel too.
We'll put that at the top of the list.
We should have went to our meeting.
Okay, so now I want to update you on, and get your input on the courtyard area. So between the existing school's renovation and the new addition, there is an open area, open to the sky, that's now a courtyard. So the question is, what are we going to do with it? With design, we're constantly being pressured by cost and function. What are the functional needs of a certain space? And this is where we're helping you out, figuring out how to navigate those two aspects, and then also how to make it a wonderful experience and wonderful space. So, starting with the functional aspects of the courtyard. What's happening around the courtyard often tells you what needs to happen inside. So, we have classrooms, gross motor skills, a resource room, all have windows out into the courtyard from the existing East Meadow School renovated. And then on the south side, we also have windows out into the courtyard. So that tells us that we need to buffer, if anything takes place out in this area, we would want to buffer noise or distraction of sight in the classroom so kids aren't always like, what's going on out there? Additionally, we have on the east and west side corridor with views into the courtyard. From the secondary entrance, there are views into the courtyard, so it actually becomes a pretty iconic moment in arrival experience in the school and sort of your conception of the school. So views in from this end could be pretty important. And then we can change this also, but we've heard that there might be a desire to come, if the maintenance work is happening outside and if there are maintenance requirements for inside, that a mower comes through or service access comes through the corridor out on that side. But the reason why we have a courtyard in the first place is that we are required to have a fire separation between the two buildings. Is that right, Christian?
Yeah, it's more for daylight and views.
Daylight and views, okay. And then we've heard there's an existing courtyard at the other school that's used for reading. Is that right? Yeah. And so we've heard sort of an idea that maybe a similar thing could happen here. But if there are any other uses that you want to have happen here, we'd love to hear it. So starting and looking at costs, one thing I often like to do is I like to get a handle on the square footage to cost trade-off. So I'll take the square footage of an area and then I'll say, okay, if I just planted grass here, how much would that cost? So for this option, if we just left it and we just planted grass, and there's no separation, that's about $15,000. It also means that someone has to come in and mow it every once in a while, depending on the type of grass we plant. So from a maintenance standpoint, it's not just being left alone, there's actually a maintenance cost.
If you're mowing it during a school day.
You forget.
Right.
Yeah.
I do that every day, anytime I don't come in my window. All year.
It's the best mowing area.
Certainly come before school, that's all.
So also, there is an opportunity here. This is the front facade of East Meadow today. This is the future corridor and the other future corridor. We're looking into the future classroom, or the classrooms with the views out. So this is, from here to here is where the courtyard will be. And there are two existing trees and maybe a third, it looks a little scraggly, but there are at least two substantial trees in there that we don't have to plant from day one. They're there, they're providing shade, they're providing entrance. But John's shaking his head because that means leaf raking or blowing and picking up. And
A lot of leaves on the roof, and it's
A
a
lot.
flat roof, and it clogs drains, and the leaves go down the drains, and then it clogs the drains.
right, so
And we have those problems currently?
Oh, yeah. Not the high school, yeah.
do you
But this is
hear
gonna-
about here?
Are they smelling?
This is gonna be, they have no place to blow now. You're gonna have roof all around. The tall one, the little, well, the one on the right, yeah, I mean, that's more of a ornamental
Ornamental,
type.
yeah.
That doesn't have like leaves that are gonna blow around and get stuck on stuff. And how do you get all those leaves out of there? Leaf blowers, lawnmowers. Yeah.
Makers, student makers.
Yeah,
National Honor Society?
that's what
Well, I don't think
yeah.
it's part of the town moderator's
That's
actually
what I'm
job.
looking
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot, I mean, there's just a lot to do with trees. I don't mind the ornamental type. Because those fall, you really don't have to break them up, but to have a big tree in there like that. And then when you gotta take it down, what are you doing?
Put a wood stove in
There you go.
What part of that tree is 6 feet?
6-inch caliper, so
6 inch.
it's
My eyes are.
Yeah.
the diameter of
Yeah,
the trunk.
that one's not a big one. I've already trimmed a little bit on it when it was there, but
This one is
that one is.
pretty amazing.
Well, it's very healthy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's healthy and it provides a lot of shade.
Can we transplant it somewhere else if we
Things-
don't use it in the courtyard?
Oh, it's true, no, it's true.
Isn't there some requirements about cutting down healthy trees?
Can I suggest, why don't we let Rachel go through all the options, then we can discuss the pros and cons. I'd hate to have you discard an option without seeing sort of the full range.
So we decided to look at a couple options that incorporate the trees. So if the trees are out, they're sort of mute, but we'll go forward. So this is just a simple option 2, where we still have a lawn, has to be mowed. We keep the existing trees. It's simple, there's something to look out at. It maybe doesn't screen views from each other, but then that becomes more of a management of students, like who actually accesses the area and when they access it, and that type of sort of scheduling. Building upon that and thinking more about the screening and also reducing the mowing scope, we can select types of fescues that need to be mown once or twice a year, and underplant them with wildflowers or other types of colorful perennials, and provide an accessible path through the center. And the height of the grasses start to create those fuzzy edges and also a little bit of a visual barrier for students sitting in their desk looking out. And then we could have a central area that could be left as is, or colorful chairs could be put out there. It could be a reading area. It could be pretty adaptable to whatever the school needs are.
So if you do the grasses that grow taller, then you have to have chairs up there or something for the kids. They don't sit in the fescues, right?
Right. So we're thinking that this is the path, and this is another path. This area could be mowed in the center, or it could be gravel, it could be something else, but there would be a central space that you could gather in and put chairs or rocks or stumps. Or another option would be to sort of carve out maybe two seating areas, 2 nodes in the courtyard. So one would be a raised wood deck with a hole cut out of it for the bigger tree that you sit around, maybe read or talk or have a quiet conversation. And then a river stone path with stepping stones in it adjacent to that leads to another reading area. And we could take stumps or other things, milk crates even, and paint them with glow-in-the-dark paint or brightly colored paint, so that this becomes another gathering quiet seating area, and this is a larger quiet seating area. So that's that.
Rachel, what's the size of that courtyard?
4,800 square feet.
What by what? Just trying to-
60 by 80. Roughly.
Just a quick question on that. Is you were asking the purpose for the courtyard. Just like we discussed earlier, one of the primary purposes was to provide natural light into the structure. If we go with that option where we have the trees, is it really negligible impact, or does it really be part of the purpose of having the courtyard from your perspective to get natural light?
From my perspective, and I'm sorry, John, but it greatly increases the quality of the natural light that comes into those spaces.
It does increase it.
What you don't want is glare, right? So you want natural light, you want views, but you don't want glare. And those windows do face almost straight due south, a little bit off 15 degrees. But with those shade trees kind of tempering that daylight coming in, I think that would help a great deal. To the south of the new addition, we're doing an exterior sunshade that'll be outside of the window, so we're kind of trying to do a similar thing.
Thank you.
I personally like all the options. I think they're all really neat in their own way, but obviously to me, option 3 would be the most expensive. The option 1 is the cheapest, or maybe even option 2 because the trees don't need to be removed.
Right.
Is there a huge cost difference?
We would obviously cost estimate anything that goes forward, but using really rough napkin numbers, this is your cheapest option, which would be around 15,000.
Even with the trees? I mean, even removing the trees?
Well, it'll be a little bit more once we remove the trees. That's a good point. And then this option is not that much more. Yeah, it's more like 18 to 20. And then this would be maybe around 20 to 25.
When you get into those two designs, you just show what actual area we're going to get to use. We can't go into the fescue with the children, and you've got other areas going around here. So how much of the courtyard actually becomes usable?
And an option
I
3.
mean, how much are we losing of our 2,000 square feet or wherever it is? And we got this nice big green space for people to use, and all of a sudden we're cutting space out of it, which becomes unusable because we're filling it with fescue and various other things which we're not going to walk on, sit on, use, outside to look at.
Well, I also think that you're making maintenance issues. You know, so you have a nice deck for kids to sit on, but then somebody has to make sure that deck's maintained yearly. And I know we have John, but that's a lot of work. You know, anyone
It's
has a
not gonna
house.
be, it's not gonna be wood, is it?
It could be. I mean,
No, I'm,
Or
for,
composite.
yeah,
Yeah.
composite, for not wood, this is gonna rot.
yeah.
But even so, don't you, oh no, I guess you don't say composite.
You can, but no.
I think-
When you buy it, stand.
Yeah.
I think at this point, this is great feedback, and at this point, I think this, maybe the benefit of the options shown here are more to show how the space could be used or demarcated, and then what materials it's made out of, and how things adjust to maximize the space. That's something that can move, we can change as we go forward. In this option, this whole area is occupiable, this whole area is occupiable, and we're using tall grasses only around the borders to kind of create a little bit of privacy for those. So you could, if you wanted to lock the doors and let the kids run wild, they could run around the perimeter, they could run through here, and you could use the majority of the space. This option has maybe the least amount of use per square footage. We have a mowed grass border on the perimeter, we've got the central area, and we've got the path, and that's it. So maybe that would be the least usable space. And this one, you could use the entire courtyard.
Option 3, Rachel, does it make any sense to option 2? I mean, I like that you're balancing, you know, maintenance with usability and the fuzzy edge and some screening.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make any sense to maybe flip the fescues with the green space and
Yeah.
concentrate the
Yeah.
taller stuff so that there is more usable kind of green space around the edges? I mean, I know we're
Yeah.
seeing grass are.
Yeah. So you're saying basically the yellow would become, the yellow could become the usable space.
Right, and
Yeah.
concentrate a border of, I don't know how that works,
Yeah.
fescue around the edge.
Yeah,
I mean, I think what Rachel's really looking for is, yes, obviously balancing maintenance. You heard the cost ranges at this phase, not huge, but what would the educators like to see, I guess, you know, from a usage standpoint? What would be, how could you most see these spaces, which one could you see as being most usable?
In the winter time, it's dead space, right? We're not doing anything in the winter time.
Sweat.
I'm not doing snow blowing in
No.
there.
Just shovel everything out of there.
The courtyard at West Street, right, it's just left, the snow is left and allowed to melt over time. We're assuming that would be the same here.
I don't
No,
care
it could
what's
be done, because we have picnic tables there. I mean, you could put picnic tables there, it'd be a place for kids to have lunch, you know, small groups. You're not gonna, even though I know you got classrooms all around, but, you know, you got playgrounds outside people's classrooms too, so people get used to those things.
I think any one of the options is a lot good, but I don't think we should cut those trees down at any cost. I'm buying a new blower. I don't think we should cut the tree down. That place is as barren as can be out there at those schools. And now we're going to cut more trees down.
Some of those trees are planted in people's memories too.
I don't think they should.
So when do you need a decision on these things?
Some direction tonight would be great,
Yeah.
because this will be what, I mean, it's an iterative process, so what direction we get tonight, we'll put in the design documents, we'll get the cost estimate back, we'll see how we're doing in general on our site costs.
I mean, I'm not
Revisit
just,
it.
seems like everyone wants to keep the trees. How close is the big one to the school?
It's on the survey.
Yeah, we got the survey here.
Is it overhanging that? Might be a little bit. Trim back.
I think they were trimming it back
Back a
a
little
little
bit.
bit away from the roof. Probably about 10 feet from the building, I think.
This is 9 feet.
Yeah, this is, the trunk is probably 15 feet away.
So it overhangs the roof.
Yeah.
I think it's closer to the existing building than it
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
right.
it will be to the future. So
Yep.
if it's an issue for the roof drains now,
We just have to keep,
then we should trim it
we
back.
just have to keep trimming.
Are there others, sorry. In terms of usable space, I actually like your idea, flipping, creating more usable space and do the separation with the tall grass in the middle somewhere, so you can create the separation, but you can also leave a lot of usable space. And I agree that the trees, we should try and keep the trees as much as we can.
I do have a concern about the noise stuff. Weed whackers, lawnmowers, in and out. I mean, going in and out of this space, that hall's gonna get, you're gonna have to mow it once a week. I would, if it's growing.
Or can we go like
They can do it
either
before or
early
after
morning
school.
before school starts or after school ends?
But does there have to be mowing grass?
Well, that's, well, before, probably not. I mean, school starts at, I assume, 7 o'clock there.
No,
No,
I would have said 8, closer to 8.
8.
John, have you had any experience with no-mow grass? No. Have you heard of that?
No. No, I have not.
There is a seed mix, it's a little bit more expensive, but there's a seed mix that maxes out about yay tall. And you really only have to mow it once a year. So that's something that we could maybe explore. If you were okay not having like that golf course type lawn, if you're okay with a little bit of a buzz, that's something that we can definitely.
Sure, cutting green option.
As much as I like these interesting ins and outs and grasses, and I understand architecturally when you're coming in and you see that nice view from this door through the room, I think that leaving it flat with the trees gives it the most option for the teachers to use, because we really don't know how it's going to be used. I know when my kids were in 3rd grade, they did the egg drop, and they did science projects out in that area, and we had picnics in that area. So it's kind of hard to make it look so beautiful with all those nice hills
It's
and.
not going to get as much use as you think it's going to get used.
Yeah.
You know.
What about,
The other thing too is having been and worked in districts with courtyard buildings, the more you try to vary the vegetation, whatever else, over time, it starts to look like a jungle. And
Okay.
it starts to look like a mess, and then it becomes an eyesore.
I mean, the West Street courtyard, it's a mess.
It was pretty with flowers at one point.
Yeah, well, this must have been before me.
When you went to school there.
I went to school, yeah. What about, watering? I mean, are we gonna have a sprinkler system out there? So it's gonna look like, the grass is gonna look like the grass in the back of the school.
There's an outlet
yeah.
on the wall there, there's already a water spigot
Yeah.
there.
Right, but I mean,
So it
It's
was,
already there, right,
Spring, yeah.
part of the whole thing.
so there's 5 guys now. I
Look at her.
I mean, this all gets, I mean, yes, I understand, but maintenance, there's me and hopefully one other guy.
Have a day custodian, you put a sprinkler on, turn the sprinkler on, let it water some things a bit,
You
Yeah.
can.
We'll have hose bits around the perimeter just to help with wash down and all that also, so.
Yeah, I'm up for anything, I mean, as long as, the vote is the vote, and I'll do what I can, of course.
No, but we appreciate it, and we actually expect you to tell us things that we don't
I
necessarily see.
just don't like, I was in a building where, going through a building with wheelbarrows in dirt, in grass, it's gonna be a mess,
well, what about turf or fake grass or whatever?
AstroTurf.
you know?
There you go. Yeah, like an outdoor carpet, but,
But then,
if you don't make it there, it'd be pretty ugly, but.
It's not so much, I mean, in the beginning, when it's first done, it's gonna be easy. It's gonna be all trimmed, it's all gonna look beautiful. You talking 2, 3, 4 years, that's when stuff, it just starts
It becomes the jungle.
going down. I mean, West Street Courtyard, I mean, there's, nobody goes out there, I don't think. I haven't seen anybody out there at all.
I think this
Yeah, use it.
They do?
Yeah.
I haven't, I mean, I just haven't never seen anybody even walk out there. But,
I think these are all the kind of things that it doesn't always have to fall upon the maintenance people. It could be projects for parents, it doesn't have to be,
I hope
it could be a
so.
staff thing,
I
you know?
hope so.
Doesn't have to totally fall upon you. If someone wants to come cut the grass in there or water things, or,
Right.
and we got a lot of master gardeners in the community, you might come up with some great ideas to make it look, easy to take care of, but make it look nice, because
I'm not against it, hopefully I don't
Yeah.
sound like I'm against it, I just,
well,
it's a little bit of a problem, I mean, it's a project, it's
Yes.
keeping it going and making it look nice. Like you said, people walking in aren't gonna see that focal point.
Would it be possible to, we wouldn't be able to put a big lawnmower out there, but would to make some kind of storage spot for,
Push more.
No, this is big enough for just a push mower.
Yeah,
I mean,
so, but I mean,
push, we'll just go, I mean, you know what you mean, instead of going through.
You're just- yeah,
We still gotta get the grass out,
Right.
and the leaves out, so,
Bag it.
it's not my lawn, not like my lawn.
Yeah.
Never falls, stays there.
you know.
But we talked about flexibility.
Not suburban.
I think it might make sense, I think we agree that we want to keep the trees. If we keep it simple enough and go with grass, instead of just, a variety of vegetation there. It may also allow us in the future, if we want to create a seating space or something,
Right.
it's simpler to really do some modification.
We had talked about, the sidewalk, they would go from one door, would swoop down, it would be like a snake.
Yeah.
Like that. And that's great, you can always put things in there, keep the trees and put some benches. I was thinking more simple stuff, and then people can plant flowers.
It
And
makes
then
sense.
the next year they can plant more
Yeah,
flowers.
keep it simple to start with and let it evolve into something else.
Right.
Not worry about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
depending
agree with
on
one
the
that sounds like
teachers
keeping it
and how they want to use that space as an outdoor classroom or science experiments,
Yeah.
or composting.
Do you think it's worth having a walk between the two doors?
Yes.
So maybe it's option, go back one.
1.5.
Right, option 2 with a walk. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like a lazy,
A lazy walk.
winding,
So
something like that.
explore.
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this isn't the first courtyard that is going on with other schools, and what we're seeing with a lot of the courtyards in additional remodels is more hard surfaces with pockets of green area, garden walls for the students to sit on. And some of them put in large rocks for them to run around between or sit on or play on. So, or fall off of course. But that's what we're seeing is almost a 2/3 hard surface to a 1/3 soft green area that they can go congregate in and sit around in the shade of a tree, say. But everybody's different. Everybody's different.
Okay, I pass the torch to Mark. You're in good hands.
Thank you.
Again, primarily, I think most of you are familiar with the process that we need to eliminate these front wells and create a new public water supply, primarily because of this Zone 1 radius, which is essentially, from DEP's perspective, is supposed to be used strictly for water resource areas. So the fact that it's currently in violation with the driveways and the roadway, and the fact that we probably may want to expand the capacity of the well ever so slightly and increase it, that DEP would frown very heavily upon any development within this area. So basically this Zone 1 has to go away in order to do the construction that you're proposing to do. We had explored the possibility of putting this at the very north end of the project site, putting the well up in this location, way up to the north. We've looked at, again, this is a preliminary discussion. Nothing's decided yet. We're still in the process of going through the scenario. And anytime you have a public water supply, there's two zones associated with it. The Zone 1 primarily is supposed to be used strictly for water-related issues. There's a Zone 2, which is much larger diameter. You're not really restricting what you can do there, but DEP wants to know everything that's going on in that area. So that's something that has to be explored and delineated. It does create some minor restrictions on uses in that location. The only one which probably would be relevant here is if it went onto a private residential site, there's a limitation on how much sanitary sewage you can dispose of on those sites, and there's so many gallons per day per acre. And basically, if this circle goes onto the abutting properties, then it would possibly, not necessarily, possibly limit the ability of those houses, those 3-bedroom houses, to go to a 4-bedroom house, possibly. So that would be one of the aspects, and that's why we sort of have, at this point in time, shuffled it around so it have least impact on any neighbors. We explored the proposed development up to the north and sort of taking that consideration. I do want to reiterate, this is a moment in time we're looking at where this site should go, but just to keep you aware, it does have potential to impact some of the recreational fields here because it's supposed to be used strictly for water resource areas. DEP could be flexible about possibly having those for athletic fields if there were some appropriate restrictions regarding herbicides and fertilizers, but no guarantees. We'd have to work that out with DEP at that point in time. I think the other bigger aspect of this scenario, if we put the well here, we'd have to run a new water pipeline to the existing pump house and then connect it to the existing school. This is, not to make it simplistic, but this pump house is functional right now, which serves this current well, so it's not a huge monumental process to connect this well to here and primarily use the same controls that we have today. I think one of the more important things that is a concern is the schedule.
Yeah, keep going too, sorry, Matthew. Let's go up to one more. There we go.
Yeah. The schedule is primarily the well permitting process is, I don't know if you want to go to, I've got some scenarios here about possible timelines associated with permitting the well. Basically, on the worst case scenario, you're probably talking almost a year to get this well approved. And we have to have it approved, the well approved, the new well constructed, the old well abandoned or taken out as a water supply before we can start construction. So there's a timeline here that this well study and procedure has to start now rather than later because we need to get done. That's the worst case scenario. DEP has in their permitting guidelines, it's almost like a 4-part submission. After you meet with DEP, you submit your first application, which since it tells what you're proposing to do, they have a period of time that they can review it. They have the ability to take up to 24 days just to review it, see if you have all the proper information. And then if they say, well, I think you're missing one piece of paper, they can have a deficiency report, or if they happen to feel a little bad that day and want an exclusion, they can say, well, we think you need another piece of paper before we even accept it from an administrative perspective, and that can delay it another 60 days. And once they approve that, then you submit they review it from a technical perspective, and the same process goes through again. Taking worst case scenario, it could possibly take up to a year. I don't anticipate it doing that. What I anticipate would be a realistic time would be about 7 months to get it approved, and if everything just went perfect, you possibly could get it done in about 6 months. So the biggest issue I'm trying to talk to you tonight is you need to institute getting the well study started, and get things, because it has to be done through DEP before you can even go through the process of hiring a well driller, getting the well installed. You got to do a drawdown test. You got to get a lot of reports associated with that. That has to be submitted to DEP. They have to review it again for a second time. It's just a long process. And basically, the primary speech I want to tell you that you've got to get moving on that so that you aren't delaying construction 12 months down the road. You're waiting for DEP to say, okay, we agree you have a new water supply. You can abandon the water supply anytime you want to, but you got to be able to have the supply to supply the school.
Why haven't we started already?
Need authorization to go proceed.
Right, so we have proposals from Berkshire Design Group and a few other folks to do the well design process. And so we're evaluating that right now with Alan and Chris. And it took us a little while to get those proposals, and now we're hoping to get go from there, and then get the design work done, and then bid this out separately. You know, in some ways it's a blessing and a curse. The MSBA went through our schematic design numbers very carefully and pulled out everything that had to do with the well and set it aside that they wouldn't participate in those costs. So in some ways, that makes it a little bit easier to do this process before we do the rest of the building process, and not really involve the MSBA at all.
These schedules go beyond your bid date.
This.
These go beyond your bid date, right?
Right, and I think that we have a little bit of flexibility because we won't be intruding upon the
Zone 1.
we won't be intruding on zone 1 for phase 1 of the construction. But after,
This is the zone 1 that you needed?
Didn't he just say we can't do this until we get approval? You're giving us mixed messages here, unless I'm missing something.
No, you can't do construction inside zone 1.
right,
Or you'll be in violation of DEP's public water supply issue.
On the existing one.
Right. So you would physically be able to work here, I'm talking strictly with DEP blinders on the public water supply scenario. You wouldn't be able to work inside this circle, or you'd be violating your existing public
So
water
that
supply.
where the parking lot's gonna go, that you're gonna have to build so we can get this done, so you're inside the circle?
Phase 1 against the beginning of the project is essentially this area here would be under construction.
right. So we might have a little bit of leeway. I'm not saying it's ideal, Jim, but I'm just saying that for phase 1 of the project, if it comes to it, if we have to, we might be able to do construction. We will be able to do construction south of existing East Meadow, while the well is hopefully being buttoned up, that we have a little bit of leeway there. But I mean, I agree mostly with what Mark's been saying, that the sooner we can get on the
Well,
well.
the question sooner, I'm just questioning your time schedule, because this could, you postpone the school 6 or 8 months, we now have 6 or 8 months of inflation on this project, and we're back looking at money we don't have.
Right.
Like Courtyard, we have other issues.
So actually, that's a good point. I don't understand that. We can't even go to bid.
I don't know, that's what I'm trying to find out.
Okay.
I'm getting mixed emotions. They're saying that it's gotta be this, it's gotta be that. And I look at that circle, and you're gonna run a driveway up through it, you're gonna run a parking lot up through it. Is that not part of the construction? I don't know. These are the questions that I'm a little old guy and I get confused, but I'm really confused now what you guys are saying. And I'm concerned about getting started.
Right. So that was part of the reason why the phase 1 boundary, and I'm sorry we didn't bring those phasing plans, but that's part of the reason why the phase 1 boundary is where we put it, because we didn't want to intrude upon that area at the very beginning of the project. So we have a little bit of flexibility there, but yes, as soon as we enter phase 2, then we're dealing with the whole site. And certainly we will be intruding upon that.
This is putting a lot of
Well,
faith in,
setback.
we're putting a lot of faith in DEP that no one in this town has ever had faith in. Correct? Okay.
So what do we have to do to get this water, this well done?
Well, you guys-
We just got
We just got the proposals
second
tonight
proposal.
before the start of this meeting, and we're discussing it, and we just have to pull the trigger on it.
So it's in progress.
Yes.
Yeah, after the meeting, then I go home and get to read them and see.
Good for you.
That doesn't end up talking to you.
So does this process make sense to everybody though about where the new well is going and the new piping? So this is existing piping in purple here, and then the blue is all new piping into the new school.
So there's that DEP process, which may take a long time, hopefully not that long, whatever it is. But also there seems to be some uncertainties around this proposed well. Are those uncertainties outside the DEP or just strictly related to what you just shared with us related to the DEP?
I think it's more related to this committee about where we choose that money. As far as DEP is concerned, again, I got my DP blinders on. They're looking at it from a regulatory perspective. They want to make sure that first thing, you have total control of zone 1. You have to own and control zone 1. So that small circle has to be within your property. Zone 2 becomes more of almost a political aspect because in theory, you could put that zone out and encumber your neighbors with this restriction. But from a political perspective, you want to be careful about, doing that scenario. So we have to sort of balance it out. So it's a decision that has to be made. I think you can proceed with the DP first phase about choosing a location. That can happen very quickly. Again, there's a 2 or 3 step process before we can start the submission to DP. Meeting, site visit with them. We would discuss with them exactly where that circle was going to go and the ramifications of it.
But anywhere you move that circle, the zone 1, you're still gonna encumber neighbors with zone 2.
Yes, we are. The zone 2, again, it's sort of hard to see.
Right.
The zone 2 comes up here.
But even to the left, so you're gonna get the people that live on, Green, what's
Maybe.
Green Meadow?
Yeah, the zone 2, there's a new subdivision up here. We've taken that into account.
Deerbrook.
We've looked at that and saying that this line will not encumber any of those lots.
Back there, what was left.
But to the left here, there's a lot here, and it does slightly encumber to their property.
So that, they can refuse that.
Well, they can refute it, and I don't want to get into all the legal implications, but in theory, doing that would probably not encumber them because it wouldn't take the entire parcel. Only that portion of the lot will be restricted to what they call 440 gallons per day per acre of loading. So, as long as they stayed on that portion of the property, it would not affect them. These are little things that need to be examined, so I don't want to make it like we totally examine them, but things that can be worked out, can be slided just for a little bit. On the side here, the size of the circle based upon the withdrawal rate that we get from DP.
But do those people have a right to say no?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't believe so. I mean, I just think if you're a private home, residential lot in a private home, you could go and drill a well 6 inches from your property line, and once you did that, your neighbor could not put a septic system within 100 feet of your well. Even though it was your well on your property, you would have encumbered him. Politically, I think you need to balance that out. So this is sort of the same thing as a private residential. I put a well on my property. Now he has some restrictions, very minor, on his septic system.
And those houses have to be zoned for bedroom too.
So we're all going way out near the woods there, you're talking, at the far north end of the property?
The reason is here rather than further north.
Athletic fields,
Pardon?
put the line in and go to athletic fields to.
Yeah, that's fine. Put the line
work around and.
Yeah, it's not a big thing. Fast up there.
It's away from all the leach fields up there and so on, you guys know all that, of course.
Yeah, their leach fields are here. I mean, we have, there's no whole story about it. We're working with DEP on the 2 septic fields and how we're going to balance the sewage from the new school. So the DEP is very much aware of this whole process that we're doing, and then what's going on. We've had conversations with them.
Does the north side include the approved expansion of Maximilian? Is it phase 2, the development?
Yeah, again, the reason this well is this far south, or not any farther north, is we had the subdivision plans that were approved here, and we sort of overlaid them, and that's why this zone 2, we sort of kept it out of those approved lots, so that would not encumber them. So, I mean, technically, you could put this well much closer over here, but politically, it wouldn't be the astute thing to do. So that decision has to be worked out. But getting the ball moving, so we attack this 6 to 12 month deadline, I think is a crucial aspect.
Okay, any other questions on the well?
Well, at the very least, I think we'd like to understand what the impact is. We're talking about hypotheticals. We don't want to really look like a bunch of folks who come together and say, we really don't care about anybody else. We'd like to be able to show that we are really thoughtful and we are doing it that way. And maybe at the end, it doesn't really mean anything. Maybe at the end, the impact is so minimal that the DEP doesn't really care, or those folks will be saying, you know what, whatever I do is on the other side of your circle and I'm good. But it will be good to find out, because right now any decision will be based on some hypothetical or some, nonchalance on our part that, maybe we don't really care, go ahead and do what needs to be done for the school project. It would be good to find out what the true impact is. Other than that, I think the sooner we start this, I agree with Jim that, the sooner we get into this, the better it is, because this is going to be a problem even when we try to start building the parking lot to be able to get the kids in and out.
I don't want to get into detailed numbers, but the restriction, if you are in a zone 2 with a septic system, is a maximum of 440 gallons per day per acre. A 4-bedroom house is 440 gallons. If these lots are 1 acre size, they in theory could hold a 4-bedroom house. In reality, it may be a case of these houses will be prevented from going to 5 bedrooms. This is 4.
Yeah.
But again, it's a little impingement, and it could be as simple as talking to these people and saying, look, do you mind if you get a restriction to never be able to put a 5th bedroom in your house, in your property? I mean, people don't like to have voluntary restrictions on their property.
No, particularly, I remember that when we were looking for a house, we looked on that street, I thought that the lots were bigger than an acre, actually.
They might be bigger than an acre.
Like an acre and a half.
Yeah, Deerbrook?
Deerbrook, yeah.
So the restriction, it's
The houses
440
aren't,
gallons.
there's a couple of houses in there. No, the one right next to the school isn't, those houses aren't that big.
Some are decent size.
The bigger ones are way back.
Are you thinking of the newer section that you went in?
I have that down there, but I'm thinking that there's more than an acre lot.
And the other thing is, having sat on the planning board for 4 or 5 years, I don't remember a lot of cases where people came in and said, I want to add another room or an extension to my
It's a
house.
very minor issue. Actually, the concern came up, we had an informal meeting with the Board of Health, and one of the requirements to install a well anywhere, you have to get a well permit from the Board of Health. And this was an issue that the Board of Health brought up, rightfully so, protecting the residents of the town. So that's why we sort of played around with this and trying to balance this location.
We need to know if this is going to affect the budget we have already approved. We don't have any extra money, guys. You can't come back in here and tell us that we need another $60,000 to build a well now. We don't have any money.
That's been budgeted.
If I'm saying, it's going to be in your budget.
The construction of the well and the design of the well.
Jim's worried about inflation, though, if this delays the project.
Inflation and installation, you were at that town meeting, that was nice and placid. It's usually not that way.
Right. I just want to be clear that the cost of drilling the well and the cost of designing the well was included in that.
And I want to be clear, are we still in there? When you get through all of this and do all of this to the DEP, are we still in that budget number? We need to know if you're not.
In the worst case scenario, Jim, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if this thing is over our budget number, where will we get the funds? Or what fund will we have to get?
We got to go to bottled water.
Something like that.
We'll have the old time
I'm
pumps.
down, I didn't want to say, I'll be quiet, I've seen that.
Pump the
bucket. We don't have an extra 4 months of inflation built in. We have a contingency. We've got to figure out, okay, if this goes worst case scenario and goes out to 12 months, and we're supposed to start the construction in 9 months. Right. We got 3 months of inflated construction costs potentially when it goes out to bid.
10%.
Some other topics. We discussed this with the department heads earlier, but wanted to bring it up. I think John in particular was going to take a more look at this, but right now our mechanical equipment as designed for schematic design was 3 boilers. 2 of them are dual fuel, which can run on either oil or propane, and 1 of them is a high efficiency condensing propane boiler. And I didn't have my pros and cons in front of me, but we wanted to at least consider the idea of going all propane. Propane boilers are more efficient than oil boilers. It would be a little bit easier to maintain if all of the equipment was on one fuel source. There would be only 2 boilers instead of 3 boilers. So we'd save on some square footage on the mechanical room. That would still be redundant. You only need 1 boiler at a time. You would not need the 10,000 gallon oil tank that we're installing, a new 10,000 gallon oil tank in front of the renovation portion of the school. But the big con is that the cost per gallon fluctuates unpredictably, and then you're tied into all propane, and you don't have the ability to switch depending on market conditions between propane and oil. So I don't know if anybody on the school building committee has strong opinions about that. The department heads were going to take a look at that, but we wanted you to be aware that that was an issue that we're considering and get any input tonight for in the next few weeks, at least, again, in terms of what we budget going forward for design development.
What are other new schools doing? What other designs? What's the pattern?
Yeah, it's hard to say. We haven't done a lot of schools where you don't have access to natural gas. So I think
We have, and I ran it by our commissioning group, and they recommended dual fuel because of market conditions. It gives you the most flexibility. Any boiler replacements that we're doing right now with the accelerator repair are going with propane and oil. Is dual fuel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just you're going to be held hostage to the propane prices the rest of your life, or not that much. Some savings now up front, but not that much.
And we budgeted for this, right? The dual fuel plus.
Correct.
Yes.
At least I stay with dual fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. The well process we've discussed, and then we just wanted to confirm, we've spoken, I don't remember, to be frank, if it was with the school building committee or with the department heads, but on irrigation, we did not include that in the budget for schematic design. We just want to confirm that we are not pursuing irrigation. It does help with lead scores, which we're starting to really dive into our lead credits. So by not irrigating, you are helping with some of the lead, with the lead point. But we just want to clarify.
So do you have any idea? So we can take a step back. There is some cost to creating the irrigation early on or installing the irrigation early on. But also there is some benefit potentially because our lead score will go up and we're going to get some more credit for it.
No, your lead score will go up without irrigation.
Without irrigation.
Without irrigation?
Not wasting
Because you're
water.
not
Not
using
wasting
as much water.
All right.
He
So,
wants you to not use water after the first year
yeah.
for
So
irrigation.
the cost of putting irrigation.
Without the
And that's not
field
budget.
management plan right now, it doesn't make much sense to spend the money.
And there's maintenance issues afterwards, and
Yeah.
there's pumps and lines.
So no.
No, great.
Great, that's what we thought, but
Thank you.
it's coming up, so, thank you.
Move on with that. Key dates, so the week of May 5th, we still have to schedule that, but we'll have another meeting with the design issues, the subcommittee. Helen and I are both out of town on the 19th of May, and so we're wondering if the school building committee could be rescheduled for May 12th. What you wanted to see.
That would actually work better because there's
Yeah,
a
we
big
could-
event at the high school at junior high on the 19th, so that works out.
Is that I-5, the subcommittee, is that set? Judy, is that set?
Is that date set?
What?
It is not.
I could make the last one, you know.
Yeah, no, we want to make sure you can make the next one.
That date does not work for us. We have a Title I parent night,
Which date?
the 5th.
Oh, it's okay.
I think it's just
Well,
that week.
Well, the 5th is Thursday, so.
Not that day.
Why don't we go line by line here? So the people that are on this design issues subcommittee are pretty much here. No, they're not. Jen and Deb are not here.
Right.
All right, why don't we schedule that separately, but we want to make sure it's a day that Jim can make. And Jim, you told me previously that
Tuesdays are the best, but I can break three.
Tuesdays are the best?
I
Okay.
couldn't come the last ones again, I've been opening, but I can probably rearrange.
Okay,
Tuesday?
Tuesday the 3rd.
Let's pencil that in.
Yeah, but that
Okay.
meeting is,
No, the would be the 6th,
no,
right?
now we're talking about subcommittee meeting that you're not going to be.
Tuesday the 3rd, we've got
We have the
commissioning.
commissioning meeting.
Are you, yeah, are you guys talking about 5-5?
Yes, pretty well. We're still on line item 1, sorry.
Is it
Okay.
What time, Helen?
For the 19th.
What time can Jim make? Jim?
I can get
We
it by
just changed that to 12.
By 3, is 3 okay?
By 3? Yeah, okay.
3 o'clock on
What
the
day?
3
6th?
o'clock?
Are we looking at?
I thought we were looking at the 3rd.
No, oh, no, sorry, we're talking across each other here. We're looking at the week of the 5-5 for the design issue subcommittee, so.
But
was
that
the
Monday is
two-
the 2nd, and it's not the 5th.
Okay.
So if you're looking at Tuesday, you're looking at Tuesday, May 3rd.
Oh, I put Thursday on there, okay, then no. How about the 10th? Is that too close to the 12th?
Well, it's 2 days away.
Okay. We'll do this via email. This is gonna take too much. And we don't have Jen in there. So.
Could make that work.
We could do the 10th. I mean, it's more getting buy-in for things that get reviewed on, which is now the 12th, if we get that approved.
This is an afternoon meeting, right?
An afternoon meeting at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, I can make almost, I'm pretty flexible in that area, so just send it on, rearrange things. Julie's got more things on the plate than I do.
She's just trying to get everything going to the finish line, trying to get it ready to hand off to Carol.
Keep going, Judith.
Keep going. I'm going as fast as I can go. Feel like, Scotty, it's all I can give you.
Extra caffeine coffee in there.
Yeah, for this.
We're punting this, sorry.
And then the 12th.
What about the 12th, yeah? Is
That works for me.
Okay. The 12th work?
At 6:30?
Really?
The rest of the dates I think Alan touched on.
Great.
All right. Any other business to come before the committee? Sounds good. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second in favor? Aye.